Okay. I'm ready anytime.
Good.
Good evening. We will start the February meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Call to order at 7:08. I'll start with introductions.
Joyce Gifford.
Mike Mitchell.
Lisa Normand.
Sean Datchler.
Scott Archer, staff.
Okay. That was quick. Short group. Or small group. Okay. First topic on the agenda is our annual election of officers, and this is carried over from our last meeting while we reached out and discovered some people's interest.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Bob Burns as the 2014 chair and Lisa Normand as the vice chair.
I second.
Any discussion? The railroad train's moving, huh? All those in favor of Bob Burns as our chair and Lisa Normand as our vice chair, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Do you want to take over?
Oh, certainly.
That's how it works.
Golly.
I got to move my snack out of the way.
Oh, do I have to move and everything?
Sure. You got to sit in the middle chair. You got to be close to the...
Well, then you got to change your name tags out there too.
Right?
Okay.
Switch the name tags. And
Switch-
you got the
switch
gavel
your-
now.
Well, he's still the chair.
No, no. I just got elected out.
Mike doesn't mess around.
That's right, boy. We're moving.
All right. So
Okay.
now I got to find your agenda. Here we go. So, where's our documents? Where's our minutes?
Should be on there as attachments.
No, they're not on here.
Oh, boy.
I read them at home and I'm comfortable with what
I'm not sure what's going
I
on,
read
folks. I
them home as well.
apologize.
I don't know.
Does anybody need a hard copy of anything?
I read them at home also.
Yeah.
I've got the hard
Maybe we're
copies.
okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from our January 23rd meeting.
Second?
All those in favor? Any discussion first? Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved as written. Are we all the way down to 5? Is Yes. that where we
We
are? All right. Do we have any citizen comments this evening? We are moving on. All right. Presentation. Well, welcome. Yay. Yeah.
You guys probably remember Christina Robertson Gardner. She's with our
Yes.
Community Development Department, and I'll turn the lights down for you.
I'm
She's
gonna
going to give
move
you
my-
the she's going to give you the update presentation. And remember,
Can
you
we
can
push it?
you can switch the little button on your
Oh.
computer screen too. Just switch it over to the left. And,
Hey. What?
oh,
All right, I got to figure it out.
man in the back behind.
Oh,
the
there we
window.
go.
The man behind the curtain
Where
takes
is the
care of
button?
us.
Oh, right here, the silver button.
So let me just give a
Push it
quick
to presentation.
reminder. So
There you go.
we're doing this partly at your request, and then also partly at the request of our community development group, who are spearheading the planning project, the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. So this is basically we did this presentation at the beginning of the process. I don't remember which month it was, but it was late summer, early fall, maybe, I think, somewhere in there. In fact, you did the presentation, I think, right, Christina, to this group. And so she's probably going to explain the process, but this is just your opportunity to hear the update and to ask any questions that you have. And so this is your chance to kind of find out a little bit more about the project. And just so you know, Christina, we have it as a standing item on our agenda every month now, where your department provides a little written update, and I've been passing that along to the group, so they're at least somewhat in the know. But this yeah. So anyway,
Thank you, Scott. How many of you have been to our website, Rediscover the Falls?
I have.
Yep. How many are following us on Facebook? Ooh, follow us on Facebook. If you have a Facebook account. We have some great photos and kind of weekly and daily updates. What I'd like to do today is I have a PowerPoint presentation from the City Commission that Walker Macy put together 2 weeks ago. And I'll briefly run through it. Some of the slides I'll slow down on and speak more in detail, and other we'll kind of forward through. But I'd like to give you just an update of where we are in the process, how we got to where we are, and kind of the next steps. And then please feel free to stop me and ask questions. So these new photos, by the way, are fantastic, and we Metro paid for them for Mark Gamba, who's a well-known photographer and a Milwaukee elected official. He's a Milwaukee City Councilor. So he got on a boat last month and took these, which we love. They're so evocative of kind of the future and what we can expect from the site. This is the Willamette Falls, the former Blue Heron. Oops, sorry.
Oh, mine's wonderful.
So we have engaged in a pretty aggressive public engagement process that started in July at the First City Festival, which is our assistant planner, Kelly Nussberger, right there smiling. But we've tried to reach out through about 45 community conversations with groups like you to all the way to local Oregon City groups to regional and statewide groups, especially to stakeholders involved in these 4 values. We've had 2 opt-in surveys with over 2,000 people responding. We've had multiple interactive community events, including the First City Festival, an interactive event in October, and then one in December. So we've tried to reach out as much as we can to try to get people's feedback on where we're going and if we're going in the right direction. Here's a photo from the October event, which was really well attended. It was 120 people. As you know, the site's location is at the first 4 blocks of historic Oregon City and the former Blue Heron paper mill that went bankrupt in February 2011. Even though NRI Global, the company that was hired to take down all the machinery, they took a lot out, a lot of pipes, a lot of the machinery. There's still some good industrial elements left on the site, and we're really through this master planning process of trying to define what makes the place, so when redevelopment comes in, we can try to identify some of those items that should be retained or rehabilitated in order to have us retain our sense of place. There are 4 core values that are guiding this project, made up of the 4 partners and the property trustee: historic and cultural interpretation, public access, healthy habitat, and economic redevelopment. As I go through the presentation, we'll kind of talk about it through the lens of those 4 core values. But just to recap, the partners involved are City of Oregon City, Clackamas County, Metro, the State of Oregon, in cooperation with the bankruptcy trustee. And I can give you a little update on the property site status as we move forward. We've heard a lot from everybody about historic and cultural interpretation. People really do want to make sure that what happens on this site is that we don't lose the layers of history as well as the actual structures. And we've definitely heard that. This site has a lot of layers of history. We have the birth of Oregon. We have the birth of industry in the West. This has been a sacred cultural site to the Grand Ronde and 4 other tribes for over 12,000 years. There's a lot of, this is kind of a lot of stories have happened here, and we want to make sure that we can adequately tell that.
Did the new photographer randomly get this picture?
No, this actually is an historic picture.
Okay. That's amazing.
I know, isn't that great? I love this one. This is an 1867 photo, and this is the first Oregon City Willow Mill. It did burn down, and it was rebuilt in a different way. But you are pretty much right here at what would be about Second, if Second existed. And then these are the Oregon City. This is the Oregon City flour mill, when the basements actually of this still exist under the No. 2 paper machine. And I just love this photo because it really shows how historically this was a very basalt-covered rocky area. This was not the kind of verdant forest that hit the river. So as I talk a little bit more about habitat and healthy habitat, there's some unique approaches to the site because it's not your normal reach of the Willamette, especially with the heavy flow of the falls and kind of what we can do to restore. But culturally, this was a place of transfer before the locks were created. You had to portage your goods at actually this dock and this dock before you made it onto another boat up on top of the basin and headed south on the Willamette. So before the locks, this was the place of portage. And this is the reason why Oregon City was founded here, because it was founded based on the power of the falls. There are a fair amount of historic buildings on the site. There are 50 buildings. We have identified 15 through the State Historic Preservation Office that could be eligible for National Register listing. But through our investigations over the years, there's really only 4 buildings we think have a really, either both a high value and also an and understanding that through structural upgrades or adaptive reuse opportunity can really be reused. So these are the 4 buildings we're concentrating on through this master plan, and I'll show them. Not saying that other buildings on the site a future developer could use, and we'll just let the market decide if that's going to be rehabbed. But as we move forward in our master planning, we're paying extra special attention to these 4 buildings because we think these have the highest opportunity for rehab. This is Mill B, or the Dank building. I love this 1927 strongest building. This is the inside of number 4 paper machine next door before it was the paper machine was removed, and this is what it looks like today. We also have the 1867 woolen mill foundations, both the original and the addition. So here you kind of start to see some of these buildings in orange. You have the Dank, or Mill B, the number 4 paper machine, Mill O, which is the Oregon City Woolen Mill Annex that was acquired by Publishers Paper, as well as the Holly building. This was Willard Holly's first building. These are all right on the street grid, but you also have some of these other elements that really are going to have, they're not necessarily habitable structures, but they tell a story, and together they can start retaining a sense of authenticity, such as a piece of the digester building, the Great Horton Sphere that's on the end of the street that held sulfuric acid, number 1 paper machine that's next to Holly's, boilers that were brought in the 1950s from ships off of Swan Island after World War II that were decommissioned, as well as the big basalt foundations of the Oregon City flour mill under number 2. So these are kind of the things we're looking at in eye to how to retain authenticity. As once again, I've explained, this is a site of cultural importance to 5 tribes, including the Grand Ronde, which is their ceded land. This is a picture actually of a Umatilla tribal member catching lamprey during the summer lamprey harvests. But this is not new. There's been adaptive reuse and historic mill sites all around the world. This is an example of Cape Town, and I do love this because it really shows how you can do pretty new infill next to historic buildings, and they work. You can balance the two. We're not ever asking to recreate a colonial Williamsburg here. We want to have a balance of brand new, exciting buildings along with some historic authenticity. So public access, of all the things we've heard from all of our public engagement, opt-in, through the tours, through the open houses, as people want to get out onto the site and see the falls. I mean, probably 93% of people said public access was a high priority, and public access early on into the project was a high priority. But public access is not just getting out to the falls, it's also how we're going to bring people to the site with vehicles, bikes, walking. So we're also looking at how do we take what is a seeming peninsula and reintegrate it back to our downtown. And I love this photo. I call this the pre-ODOT photo. This is where we're at the cupola of the Oregon City Woolen Mill looking north. So this is the old courthouse, if you know your pictures. And this is actually the bend right at 6th Street today. And 99E would have come right here. So this shows what a integrated Main Street we used to have, where we had commercial mixed use on the site area, and it was directly linked to the rest of downtown, and that's what we want to do again. But Publishers Papers had a long history, and there's also a long industrial history, so we want to make sure that that is representative. There's also a lot bigger and more unique buildings on this property than your traditional downtown, so we don't want to say, we want to respect that scale of the industry as we redevelop. So it's reconnected, but it still might have its own separate sub-district sense of place. This is also a really great overlay I like to show. This shows the original plat of Oregon City, and John McLaughlin put a mill reserve in. This would be about 2nd Street. So some of the really south part of the mill site is in the mill reserve. But you'll see here is that grid was originally platted, and you have Water Street going all the way, and you have Main Street going all the way, and pretty much we want to bring that grid back. If you look at the historic buildings, those are on the grid. Their additions often were added on once the grid was vacated. So if you bring that grid back, it really goes back to how we originally accessed the site. And it also it's a lot easier to promote economic development when we're back to a traditional block structure, that we can create sub-buildable blocks that can be sold off to maybe a master developer can sold off to other developers because we know how to build in 40,000 square foot lots. This is the intersection today of 5th and Main. We are continually trying to work with ODOT on solutions, long-term solutions to bringing vehicles into the site as well as pedestrians and bikes. Right now, this is our proposed site access. What we are doing really is we're introducing a new water street, so there'll be a new right-in, right-out here, as well as eliminating the left turn that exists today coming out of the tunnel. ODOT wants us to reduce that potential safety impact of making sure that people who are going to the site are not turning left and potentially having accidents in the tunnel in the waiting queue. But you'll be instead of, we're used to doing this, you'll take a right onto Railroad and just do a flip and go into the site. About 13% of proposed site traffic will come northbound. Most of the rest will either come across the Arch Bridge into the site or through 99E, and therefore you can go into Water Street or you can go into the site by Main Street. So really it's the 13% of people will have to do a little bit of a jug handle to go around. But for the most part, this intersection is going to work as it normally does. We've proposed a fair amount of safety improvements along this corridor to try to transition it from kind of an ODOT highway speed to a design speed of an urban street. We've also proposed a new light at 6th, which will help bring some people off of Main for the a new warrant to allow people who are taking the Arch Bridge to go this way, as well as potentially a left here. It'll also help with pedestrian connections to a future esplanade. And I think we'll do more importantly, it'll slow people around that curve. And we'll try to, as you're in this area, you are driving in an Oregon City urban street. So we are continually having that conversation with ODOT. It's not done yet. As you know, it's not a quick process, but this is kind of how we see the site. In a sense, we have to work with what we have, and there's no great magical solution. So we're really looking at how to make this downtown even more multimodal, even more connected. How do we make sure to get people on and off the site? And I'll talk a little bit about parking options, but like most things in life, it's going to be a toolbox kit, and we're going to have to always work on how to use the best wealth we have, because we can't build a flyover into the site. So this is a look of what Water Street looks today. Doesn't really look like, but this was platted Water Street. This is right behind the water filtration plant and just south of that parking lot next to the administration building. If you've ever parked there, this is just to the south of that. But Walker Macy has nicely provided us some inspirational drawings of what that could look like. So if you're right here, you'd be taking that loop around of Water Street back through 4th back to the site. And then here's kind of what a future esplanade could look like as it connects up to 99E that already exists today and then into the site. And this is looking at the Mill, which is the Oregon City Woolen Mill edition. So the pedestrian connection, we have a very strong support for a new multimodal pedestrian trail all along the Willamette out onto the PGE Dam and then back along the spur line to Kenema. There's also a proposal to take the existing ODOT kind of 1930s stairs that go from the promenade that don't cross the railroad to provide a new crossing that will get onto the site. And that'll open up this area for pedestrian connection so people can get to the site through the McLaughlin neighborhood and not have to all funnel down to the site from downtown. Most likely this will be another elevator. It's kind of like a future project. We put it on. It's not at all any detail as this, but we really see chasing grade. It's going to be hard to probably do an ADA ramp. But we're working on with our Public Works Director, John Lewis, making sure this is added to our TSP and looking at long-range strategy of how we can get that funded and when in the process does it make sense to get that funded. So this is a photo looking south from the pipe chase, kind of at the intersection of 3rd Avenue and the river. And this is, for the most part, a good example of the invasive species area of the site next to the Willamette. We have a lot in there, but there's a lot of opportunities to not only add habitat restoration, but this is an example of what the multimodal pedestrian and bike access way be. But they also are looking, can we get down lower to the site and have some more kind of side trip views rather than kind of this would be more of the quick way. So I love this. Kind of shows how can we use existing industrial remnants.
So that, where that is built, is that raised area there is on an existing?
Yeah, that was an oil barge.
Oh, there it is right there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, these are just inspirational renderings, but they can get people, let people need pictures. And so we want to get these pictures so people can understand what we're looking at. Also looking at the opportunity of, there's an existing dock here. There's a little bit of a kind of an indent in a little shallower, kind of slower water. We've taught preliminary conversations with the Corps and DSL about, can we work on making this a larger public access dock? And, this is so early in the stage. What we've heard from them is they don't see any, fatal flaw from it. So,
Whose jurisdiction is that dock currently?
that right now is a little bit up in the air. It's a local group who's used it based on agreement with the paper mill. So there's some outstanding questions on that. This was really more of a, if we want to know, can we put a dock back that's a public dock, is that, and what we've heard is there's no fatal flaw, but of just a long process to
Well,
sort
generally,
out.
once something's there, you can kind of improve it versus trying to put something from scratch.
Yeah, it's not quite a public dock now, so there's some transition and yeah. But one nice thing is because it is that little inlet, you're not part of the quick flow of the Willamette. You kind of can pull in a little bit and have a little quieter area. So this is the old foundation of Station A, which is now owned by PGE. They took down Station A about 5 years ago, and we kind of highlighted in yellow. If you've been on a site tour, this is the most amazing place ever, and we want to get people out there. And so this is kind of the goal. I feel almost like I want to have like little rays of sunshine. Like this is where we want to bring people. And PGE has been a really great partner this year with a little P. I mean, they're not a formal partner, but we are working on a long-term collaborative access easement for this site, and they've been supportive of public access on the dam to that site. I mean, obviously, we would have to retrofit the dam for more traditional public access, but they have been very supportive of it. So we're really, and all their concerns are all very legitimate related to operations, which I feel we can work around. So this is a walk out to the dam. You can see even today, this photo is before some of the items were taken down by NRI. So it's even less now, but we can, imagine what it could be. It still could be a functional dam, but we could allow pedestrian access out. This is on the dam looking back at Melly, which is one of the non-historic properties, but this building is actually built inside the lagoon. It's really unique, and the lagoon is actually part of the property. So there's some opportunities here, working with the private developer. Maybe the whole thing is rehabbed. Everyone wants the brew house, so we always have to make sure we put the brew house.
I didn't even notice that.
Believe me, I feel like I almost want to zone that for a requirement, but I don't think I can.
Yeah.
Second that.
Or do they take half down, and there's kind of something compelling about having an open space area right at the terminus of Main Street? Or does it make sense for all of it? So with this master plan we're moving forward is not dictating any of this. It's going to be future negotiations, but once again, kind of eliciting here are the opportunities to think about. So a lot of people forget, but we do have the spur line that goes almost to Kenema that has some opportunity. It's a real different feel up on top. It's kind of more placid, quieter, more reflective than kind of the rushing water of below. So I really like this. If you've ever got out to this part of the Upper Willamette, it sometimes has a lake-like feel. This is what the spur line looks today. This is the main line right here, and this is 99E. And this is a nice rendering of what it could look like. I have to say, when this gets towards Kenema, the main line and the spur line become at grade. So we do have a long-term crossing question, and we're not really going to solve that today in this process, but it's known like that's a future project to try to figure out, how we're going to cross. For a long time, this may be a dead end, but it might be beautiful to walk and then come back. But it is our goal for the long run to figure out how to cross the main line at Kenema.
In the previous slide, or I guess one more back. So that
It goes to
is-
about here.
Okay.
So
And this is that proposed bridge that I'm seeing up here?
no, that's actually a Oregon City utility.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, storm.
Okay, that's it.
It's a
Okay.
storm line. No, the bridge is kind of back behind us. It comes out right at the VFW, which is about halfway on the
out-
site.
This is
So
the
then-
overlook. The overlook's right
Right
here.
up here,
'cause you,
okay.
you look right down it.
Okay, gotcha. So out where the tracks are at grade, how close is that if you cross the tracks and cross 99E area in
Do you know
Kenema
where
at that point?
the dye building was? The right when you came into Kenema, the industrial building to your right. It's about. I hate to give distances because it was about a year last time I was out there, but you're walking, you're separated, and then you see the main line kind of get there, and then for a while, I'd say from maybe 200 yards, you're right at together, and the river's right there, and the main line is 2 feet away. So there is this gap we got to figure out, and I don't have the answer. And Walker Macy's is not. There's so much things we're working on. Pretty much what we're doing is we're asterisking a future project at this point for this year. But the site floods, right? I love this photo. This is from '96, and this is from the 99E overlook. So they're looking down. And this building over on the Westland side has about another floor and a half below it. And this actually was the Mill A. So the falls are kind of gone. You're looking at the falls right now.
That's the PGE building on the right that they've taken down, right?
Right, this one right here. That's the platform where we can walk on. So if you look at this is the overlay of the 1996 flood inundation area. In Oregon City, our code takes the 100-year floodplain and the 1996 inundation and then creates our flood overlay district. And the flood overlay district pretty much regulates that any new construction needs to be, the habitable floor needs to be above that flood elevation area, except for potential historic rehabs. Though there are some caveats more for that. So what we're really looking at is if you take kind of this green area, you have, we've kind of taken this part out. This is the historic Woolen Mill Foundation, Hawley, and Mill O, which have some opportunity for rehab. I kind of call this a little L. And this building, as we talked about, has a fair enough out, and of course there's floors above the floodplain. So this building really has some opportunity for rehab, maybe not. It really is up to a future negotiations and a developer to figure out if that's something they want to do, or if they want to throw their hands up and say, it's not worth it. You want to negotiate a park, that's great. Or they may say, this is great, we have a fantastic vision, and I'm so happy that we're on the Willamette. So the site is complicated. This photo is underneath the Mill H, which is the area farthest south on the property on the Willamette side. And if you are looking in, you'll see that it is just a combination of many, many, many structures that are built over the years. And you can even see here we have pretty new concrete foundation pillars from the early 70s. And then behind that is something a little older. So it is this, every floor plate's different and they're all kind of put together. So it's a very, very complicated mess out there, and this area is all in the floodplain. But it also can tell a little story of the history. So while this is in the floodplain, Walker Macy identified as this area it's going to be very expensive to take everything out because most of it's concrete. But it also can tell a story. So there's some future work to be done of what to do, because rehabilitation or rebuilding in this far corner is all in the floodplain, and it's hard to reach via vehicle. So it's best to be left for open space. So we're trying to, not here to plan everything this year, but we know that this is probably the area that's most trained towards open space. But nationwide and worldwide, there's been some great projects that have taken industrial elements and brought them into really captivating open space. And if you've ever been to Minneapolis in the last 15, 20 years, they have the Mill Ruins Museum, the Mill Museum, which is the old Pillsbury flour mill that they turned into this fantastic industrial museum about flour making in the Mississippi. And Mill Ruins Park, which is right on the Mississippi, which you can kind of walk through. Sometimes you feel like you're in the Forum in Rome, these kind of archaeological foundations. But this area has absolutely revitalized this portion of Minneapolis, which was a standard story of industry turning its back on the river and people forgetting about it, revitalizing a walkway and a park and a museum and bringing energy back. This is another example of Ballast Park in Sydney, Australia. This was a tank farm and a refinery, and here's an example of what it looked like. But what I really like what they did, this one doesn't show, but they left a lot of these industrial elements, and then they also have these, they kept the circles of the tank. So even though it's all open space, you still have an understanding of what was there. You can tie it back to its history. Now, granted, this is all open space and not redevelopment, but it kind of can tell the story of how you can keep some industrial elements. Healthy habitat, really looking at adding roughness to the shoreline, helps with places for fish to rest and lamprey to rest, improve the vegetation. One of the big goals is to work with PGE to allow flow to go from the lagoon through one or more of the mill races. We have 3 tail races or mill races that are still on the property. And if we can bring that, we can bring circulation, help the lagoon, keep the lagoon healthy by keeping water through it, and then also bringing water back onto the site. So that's one of our long-term goals, to work with PGE. The other is improving the riverbank vegetation up on the Willamette, the upper Willamette Reach. And that's why we have a 1/4 mile of Willamette on the upper, and we have a 1/4 mile below the falls. So we have a 1/2 mile of Willamette River frontage on this property. So there's a lot of opportunities for habitat restoration.
Where you say restore rocky habitat, is that removing concrete?
Yeah, removing concrete, and then also so much of the development has just created this straight line and some fill. And so especially when you have on the Westland side that big seawall, there's not a lot of opportunity for salmon to rest before they go up. So just creating more inundation areas and roughness to allow some smaller pools is really a powerful thing we can do. Compared to, there's not a lot of soil historically on this area. And so adding tons of soil and adding lots of plants would not naturally been its native environment. So we're trying to find that balance of how do we bring some habitat back in and some plants back in, but know that we're in this unique basalt area. So economic redevelopment is the 4th value, and I think talking to Oregon City residents understand how important economic development is to the city and to the site. We lost 175 family wage jobs 2 years ago. And how do we work to bring economic development and jobs back to the site? There is space for both, for open space and jobs. I think it's kind of the big point. I think talking to people across the region, they may not feel that as viscerally, but I feel like when I talk to Oregon City residents, they understand why economic development for the city and also for the community is really important. If you take out the floodplain area, you start to look at the areas outside the floodplain, and start to pretty quickly, and then you look at bringing back the street segment, you pretty quickly look at the blocks. The property right at the intersection is not part of this. They're already zoned mixed use downtown. So if they wanted to come in at any time, they're already rezoned today.
So that's the old gas station
That's the
now
old
that
gas
looks
station.
like a
So
storage
they're not
lot.
zoned. We rezoned them from industrial to mixed use downtown a while ago. And so they're set to go if they ever want to resell or do it on their own. They're set. But you see, just for comparison, if you took the land here, kind of the net 6 acres plus some extra land here and here, that gets you more towards 8 acres. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 8 acres kind of is 4.5 blocks of historic downtown. So, for our context, it's a lot of area to rebuild. Even though going from 22 acres to 8 acres seems like a big reduction, it's still a lot of land. So kind of look at the waterfront blocks. Here's an existing cross-section of the site. If you're looking at the top here of the bluff, and then you have 99 right here, there's some pretty big massings already here. And people have really said, we want to make sure that no development blocks the bluff. And once we got this cross section and really understood the height, you can kind of realize it just won't happen. I mean, if you're looking at a 5 or 6 story building, whatever we do is always going to be below the bluff. Our new mixed use downtown zone, we're playing with kind of an 80-foot height limit just because you never know if spires but whatever that is, you're already 100 feet, you're easily still under the bluff. So, well, this is the framework plan that's coming out this spring and summer that's going to the Planning Commission, City Commission. And this is the wonky planner framework plan, but it's what we need to rezone the property. It's the big picture. What are the blocks? Where are the open spaces? Where are the streets? What are the conditions for a future development? What the framework plan is not going to have is all those really fun, sexy inspiration drawings. Those are going to go in a secondary document. That's going to be a strategy document. So you'll always see, and honestly, almost everybody you talk to is going to be looking at the 80-page beautiful strategy document. And only the person that is really interested in a redevelopment that's coming in is going to read the wonky planning document. So they have kind of two purposes, but they're going to run through the process of spring and summer together. So every night you have a hearing, you'll see 2 agenda items. One will be the framework master plan, one will be the strategy document. And the strategy document, the goal is to have all the partners adopt that, whereas it's hard for them to adopt a city's local implementing master plan.
We'd like to be on board with that too,
Yeah.
so as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Walker Macy's also put together some demonstration plans because people have sometimes trouble looking at this and saying, what could you do? So here's 3 examples. Here's one showing kind of the highest removal of buildings on the site. You have Mill E almost taken down, you have the clarifier removed, and you have a lot of Mill H done and 2 of those mill races exposed. And this shows the continuous pedestrian path access. They did an ADA access analysis, so just to make sure that this would be a continuous pedestrian path, and that's this one. Here's an example of what that would look like. You have the Woolen Mill Foundation here, and then you have Mill O. But you have kind of a pretty small open area, but a lot of restoration along, and more of a kind of a passive pedestrian path. Here's another example. This is kind of more of a development intensive one, where the pipe chase is kept. You have a more standard plaza, big lawn. The clarifier is kept as the overlook. All of Mill E is kept, and just a little bit of the industrial Mill H is opened up. And this is what that would look like. And this shows maybe potentially a larger building over the Woolen Mill Foundations, which would be, because the first habitable floor is actually kind of right above the basement foundation, so those would kind of be an open area, and then you'd have a habitable floor above that. And then this is a hybrid of the 2. And it kind of shows what this has. You have the pipe chase taken down halfway, so this lawn kind of falls down to grade, but you have a little bit of restoration open. And on our consultant team is GBD Architects, who've done a lot of historic redevelopment. They were on the Brewery Blocks project. They understand how to integrate historic buildings and new buildings. Can be done. This is an historic building which received tax credits, and this new building actually is a structural bracing for it. So they co-combine the 2 buildings. This is an example of what Main Street looks like today. This is the historic number 4 paper machine. And like everyone needs pretty pictures, so what could it look like? Trying to take, once again, kind of the old and then add the new, and have the old again with the Holly paper mill. And this shows something above the Woolen Mill Foundations. Again, you'd have something underneath that was open. So we'll talk a little bit about economic development. This is the slides from our economic development. We're at a place now where kind of 3 key words in the long run are transformative action, contingent relationships, and patience. And the current perception right now in Oregon City, it's a really constrained industrial site. Oregon City real estate market is not the highest in the region. And it's hard sometimes to convince Portland quality development to the size we're looking at here to come here. So what do we need to do to bring that, to make that happen? And you got to think bigger. You got to, once again, the transformative contingent relationship and patience. This is not just the Oregon City market. This is, we're billing this as a Oregon landmark. We do have good demographics around us. It's always been our thing. If you just do the demographic circle around Oregon City, You take in Westland and some other areas, we take in some good numbers, but it's trying to convince the development community that that's something that demographic is going to come visit. And I think something like the Willamette Falls site is something that's going to get this part of the region to visit a lot, and then get the rest of the state to visit every once in a while. So how do we get from this to this? Is creating pretty extraordinary projects, and what we heard is, quality creates quality, and success creates success. So the way to think of this is you start here with public benefit and to private investment. This is also a little bit of a timeline as well. So we've heard from everybody that public access is very important, and we've also heard that the site is not quite ready for redevelopment. We need to get more eyes on the site. So one of the best things we can do is to create a public access amenity that starts to raise that property value, because we're getting more and more people out and looking at the site. So public access to and along the river through the falls. And then you have something that the open spaces amenity like this might come at a later date once we get a better understanding of who the developers are, because you can't plan this type of open space till you understand really the development model of what's going on, because it could have many different iterations. Then you have things like the public infrastructure, the pipes, the transportation, utilities, all of that, the prep work that needs to get done, as well as the private development. So a way to think about this, public access, working on funding now and building now, so working with all of our public partners on trying to find ways to fund this. Open spaces amenity, trying to find ways to help fund it and understand where our commitment may be, but to coordinate with the future developer. Public infrastructure is more of a find the money, but once again, contingent on what they're doing. So that's the things you can do with, if you are building this building, we might be able to help with this project. And we've already kind of looked to figure out where that funds were going to come for. And finally, private development, which is really contingent on the private developers. So you kind of see this as going from public benefit to private investment, and also timeline. And they kind of work together. So kind of the summary from our economic team is bold actions are required to transform the site, really strong commitment to public access as early on as possible. And to our public elected officials, it's secure this funding commitments as early as you can to show the development community that you have the money to build it. And it's hard to put money down in private if you don't have kind of the secure funding on the public end. Intent only gets you so far. And then public-private partnerships that support development must be based on contingent relationships. So when you build this, we will build this. And then, of course, patience and patience and patience. This is a long process. So where we are today, we're on this side. That started this summer. We went through a framework and vision. We had a lot of community engagement and visioning. And we're down here, which is public hearings. And I can read this to you, but pretty much we start public hearings through April through the summer. So the first Planning Commission hearing is April 21st. About 4 Planning Commission hearings and about 4 City Commission hearings, give or take. But we're looking at about a mid to late summer adoption. And what that is adopting is the Framework Master Plan, the rezone from industrial to a new mixed use we're calling it actually the Willamette Falls Downtown District. It's very close to our existing mixed use downtown, but it was enough tweaks that we made a new district, and this one also allows some compatible light industry that downtown may not have. That will be adopted this summer, as well as working on this strategy document with all of our 4 partners.
What is light industry?
It's a good question. Light industry, it would be things that are compatible. I want to make something that is compatible within a downtown zone. So,
A brewer?
That's even allowed in Main Street today.
Okay.
But like shoe manufacturing or 3D printing or assembly. So we're working on ways that, because we have these bigger buildings, you also have like creative services who may want to do production, filming, all those kind of things. Heavy industry, no. While we do have a spur line, and I guess if someone wanted to buy this and bring back and say we want to keep the industrial zone, we want this, we can. I can tell you the site has been so affected that I just can't see a heavy industrial that would want to put the investment when West Wilsonville has land available right next to I-5. So, but yeah, we are kind of tweaking and trying to find that right. We don't want to, as I said, the master plan is all about this balance of flexibility and certainty. If we start to over-regulate, we don't know we don't want to regulate out a future vision, our future developer, but at the same time, we can't be carte blanche saying, no, do what you want to do, great, you have money. So we're just constantly trying to balance that certainty, flexibility. So where we are here, but this one's great. I like these 3 circles. It's fundraising, lobbying, partnership building, refining the master plan if there's a future developer or open space, and then working on the park open space. And that's just continually going to be happening from now on once we get this. I kind of call this year as year 0. So once again, the land use application, it's kind of the wonky document, but it's kind of creating that framework master plan and showing compliance with our city codes. And the vision strategy report is going to bring in a lot more of the economic development and funding strategy, which we won't see in the master plan because it's not relevant. And that is what I have. So thank you very, very much for having the patience to let me talk. But I'm open for questions, and I'd love to keep you in communication with us and keep you linked up for our process. I can tell you one thing we are doing is we really are looking at what early public access means and what does this Riverwalk really mean, and can we just, do we need to do it in phases? Can we just go all out and try to get the design for the whole thing and build it in fun? So your elected officials and all the partners are actually kind of asking those questions this spring, and our goal is to try to be able to have some type of design and planning and construction project happening next year on some or all of the phases of that Riverwalk. So it's really, the more money we can get, the more we can design. And then the more money we can get to construct, the more we can do it in less phases. So we're kind of shooting for the fences here because we have so much momentum that we want to see what we can do, and we think a bold action is needed to really bring redevelopment to this site. And so Gil Kelly, who's the planning director of Portland, is helping with Centennial Mills. I don't know if you know that redevelopment project in Portland. He looked at this site and he was saying, you need to go hard or go home, because hesitant action will probably get you nothing. So it's kind of one of our realizations this year.
I would agree. That makes sense.
Christina, did we want to mention the rescheduled event?
Yes, thank you. So usually there's a slide in there for this. The February 6th event that was snowed out, we had 330 people that were signed up to come to Keene Warehouse and celebrate the falls and sign up to be champions and drink A to Z wine, Ecliptic Brewing, and eat Nicholas food. Is rescheduled for next Thursday. So we'd love for you to come. The goal is just to pack that house and get everyone excited. It's an open house from 5:30 to 8 downtown Portland. It's the Keene has offered their lobby. It's on 13th and Gleason, I believe. And if you go to our website, Rediscover the Falls, there's a big fat button at the very top. You can click on it and register. We'd love for you to come.
So if I was scheduled for last month, I need to reschedule.
Please reschedule.
They just didn't take everybody in.
No, because we didn't want to do that because some people won't be able to make it. So please reschedule if you have. We have, right now we have about 230 people who've signed up. So we're
I just figured I was still on the list, so I need to go click the button.
Go reschedule.
All right.
Yeah,
What about tours of the site? Are you still doing those?
We're still
And how
doing
do people
Friday
go sign up?
tours. Right now we're doing more group oriented. Once again, it's easier. If you're in a group, you usually behave better. So we'll take any group out on a Friday. No, you guys were fantastic. Take any group out on a Friday. It could be Kiwanis. It could be, which we just took out. It could be a advisory group. Pretty much you have to just tell me how you're a group and how you relate to one of the 4 values, and I'd be happy to tell you out. Kelly Moosberger in our office is coordinating the tours, and we can put you out. General public tours, we're working on it. We're trying to do one on a Friday and Saturday this spring. We've just been really constrained with this timing to get this land use application. We may work with the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition this next year to do more monthly tours. So we're trying to ramp up next year on a more robust tour schedule. But right now we're doing them on Fridays.
Thank you.
I think we did a prac tour, right?
did.
So some of you went and some weren't available. I didn't go on that one because I was actually at a meeting that day. But so I know we did one, but even maybe if PrAC wanted to follow up or something,
Yeah,
maybe we could latch onto another one
Yes,
if we had a
and
small group. And
Be happy to
something.
latch you onto an existing group
Just
if
a
you want
thought.
to go again.
I always describe it that I was either taking pictures or listening to you too much, that I could do more of both if I did it again.
No, if you guys want to work, Scott can work with Kelly and we can get you on it. Sometimes we do 2 small groups together, so it's easy to do.
Great. There was so much to take in. So
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yes.
Do you guys have any other questions for Christy? Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, and then also, you can sign up to be a community champion. Very, very easy under Get Involved on our website. Takes 1 minute. You sign your name and give 1 or 2 boxes of things you can do. And this spring will be, especially after this March 6th event, we'll be collecting all the community champions, and based on the things they clicked their boxes on, things they'd be willing to do, we're going to get back in touch with you. But I think showing that groundswell of support is very important. So even getting your friends and family to put their name down, contact information, and do boxes as easy as I will follow this on Facebook and give it to 5 of my friends, to I will write a letter to the editor, to, I'll be involved in a future friends group. There's a lot of options you can choose.
good. And as far as our group, excuse me, I think that we want to support this in a way where we're making recommendations too. So as that need arises, please let us know. I mean, obviously we're following it,
Yeah.
but if you see a point where maybe you need to urge us to action.
Actually, here's a good, I don't know how you normally look at land use actions that may.
We often don't unless it's a park.
So we're going to be, we're about a week away from, 2 weeks away from noticing the land use application, and Scott will get a notice. So honestly, maybe even your March meeting, it may be a time to have a conversation about, because then your comments can be added into my staff report by
Okay.
April. Not saying that you don't, if you don't get it in, that this is going to be a 3-month process. So if you don't get it in the first night or in my staff report, you can add an additional letter about items that, you support, or we want tracked, or, things like that as we move through.
Great. Thank you.
And again, we do put this as a standing item every month on the agenda for now, and until you choose to have that change. So it'll be back on the agenda, and that might be something to discuss at the meeting next month, and maybe be thinking about that if there are any specific issues. And I can forward the land use notice.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll have it all uploaded on our website, so you can just forward the link
Okay.
and say, grab a cup of tea or coffee and settle down and take a
Read
read.
it. Thanks, Christine.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. That was great.
Very interesting.
It's so exciting.
amazing.
I know.
Amazing.
I love it. Go back.
I have to ask this. It's I just now thought of it, and I'm sure it's probably been thought about. But has there been discussion about either of the state universities as far as facility for river biology study or all the different programs? Just thinking about who's got some money?
Follow the money.
Always do.
Yeah.
No, I think we need to create a compelling, beautiful vision document that's going to be coming out of this process. And the work that Walker Macy has done, it's going to be a beautiful document. And then we just start lobbying next year, because it's hard to lobby when you don't have something you can give and create a champion. Mm-hmm. And things people have asked, what about, basically if someone has money, people have asked me, what about this person? That's actually next year. Clackamas County is actually in DC next week for other things, and they're already, we're pushing documents for them to start having those conversations, because they take a couple of years and get people interested. But we want to make sure what we send them is beautiful, so they just absolutely get excited the first time they see it.
Good question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, on to general business. Our first item is our PrAC vacancies. We interviewed tonight, and we have a little bit of a discussion and a motion.
So I volunteered to kind of start this conversation off, and I talked with Joyce in the back room, and one thing I thought I'd kick out first, and let's talk about it as a group, but maybe it's a kind of an action item for Scott, is we've got a couple members that have missed probably 3 of the last 4 months. And so maybe it's time for a phone call of encouragement, or to see if their commitments have changed, and whether we have 3 new qualified candidates that could fill one or an additional spot. So kind of with that said, the group looked at two options. One I call the open option. Open option being no Pioneer Community Center capable candidate. And so that option would be Dustin Moyer and Daniel Tupper. And then if we are able to fill the Pioneer Community Center designated seat, then the two new members that we'd recommend would be Dustin Moyer and Jerry Wagner. So I'd like to make a motion to forward those to Mayor Neely as PRAC's recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I think I would just like to add on to the first comment that you made about checking in with some of our members who aren't here all the time. I've been absent a lot lately, but I'm not one that would consider that. But I think this would be a good time to perhaps follow up with them and see if this is still an interest of theirs to serve on this.
The
this
unexcused
advisory board.
absences, excused absences, we understand, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
So-
I'll follow up on that
Okay.
for you.
Thank
and,
you.
just kind of check in to see what the interest level is and let you know if we have any change of mind or anything like that. So.
All right. All those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Scott. Next is a discussion about our park event 2014. And you guys are going to have to give me some direction on that one. Scott, are you giving us an update on that, or are we?
What are the movies? Show me the movies.
Good question. So the update is one of the issues that you were talking about is when to selecting which movie night you wanted to do. Maybe finding out based on the movies, you might choose which one you think might be one of the more popular nights or whatever. What I found out is that we will probably not know the specific movies and on which nights until the beginning of June. That's kind of when we get it pinned down, just simply because there's some planning involved in selection. And part of that, I was going to announce this under my staff report, but since we're talking about it, I'll let you know, is that we're doing a fun thing with that. Just a little sidebar for a second here, but it has very much to do with actually your question, Joyce, is that we're doing a public survey for anybody that's interested in helping us pick the movies this year. So on our website, under the Parks and Rec webpage, and you can go directly to the pool or whatever, it's pretty easy to find. There's a link that says Movies 2014, and you can go to a survey online, and under each of the 4 dates that we do, there are some movie choices. There are 2 or 3 movie choices under each one, so you can actually we're going to use that information to help us select which movies we show and on which dates. So that also might give you an idea, though, of which movies even are possibilities on which dates. And maybe I would just advise, why don't you take a look at that, regardless if you feel like voting or not, if you're not interested in attending all the movies or whatever. But certainly. Maybe we could at least have some ideas about that and come back next meeting and talk about even whether you want to wait until the beginning of June to pick one of the dates, or if you think looking at the movies that we've got, here's kind of what we've got. I could pull it up and tell you what they are right now if you want to get into that discussion, or if you want to wait until you've got more members or whatever.
We can do another.
I think there's plenty of time, but I'm just.
Well, I
letting
think maybe discuss just during the middle of the month. I'd like to look at it and then come back, and I think one of them may distill out really quickly if you
Yeah.
stack the deck.
Yeah. So that's new. That's actually new information since the last
You
meeting. that we
mentioned
had.
you touched on it last
Did
week.
I? Okay.
Barely, like you were thinking of doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just
that's
a
right,
quick
we-
technological question right now. It appears that our video went down, so we're not being live right now, just so our technical person knows that.
Oh. Okay.
I just was informed.
Oh, it's live? I thought it was taped.
No, we're live also. So if you could
Well, I
find
don't
out what's
think that-
going on there.
Back to this event, I
Yeah.
don't think that we can wait too much past. We need to make a decision by April. Otherwise, if we're really looking at having people attend clubs or sports or activities, we need to get on their schedule right away.
Right.
And
And the other deadline is the summer trail news.
Right.
Yes.
Because we missed it last year.
Yes.
And we need to be in it.
And I think it needs to be a date that, movies are movies, but what date's going to be the most convenient for us, or which, date do we think most people are going to come? I think the last Friday is probably not a good one in that a lot of people are taking their last-minute vacations before school starts.
Yeah, we miss that one often.
And that's the movie that I usually miss because, we're out of town.
Scott, do you have the dates?
Sure do.
Or what the attendance was at the other ones, too.
Okay, let's see. August 1st, and then just the 4 Fridays from there. So August 1, 8, 15, 22. And I've got...
And so
So we're doing 4 movie choices on this survey for each week. So there's 4 potential movies that people are voting for. And like I said, if you wanted to know even just an idea of what those are, I can...
I just right off the bat, the 8th and the 15th kind of in the middle, because it gets... The first one seems to be, oh, yeah, it's movie time. I missed this one.
Especially since
Let's
it's
get
the
in
first.
gear.
It's just now August, right?
Right.
We
Let's
forget
get in
that
gear, and then
it's a new month.
You get ramp up on the 8th. That kind of makes the 15th my just initial. So
I like the Ides of August.
Well, I would throw out there
Would
that
that would be the 15th?
Yes.
Yeah, the 8th. I can go with the 8th or the 15th, but I kind of feel like if we're really publicizing it well, and that might be a reason for people to attend on the 1st that they may not normally
point.
attend and kick off the movies in the park. Just as another idea. For me, isn't July National Parks Month? So I was kind of hoping there was something in July, but
We could still sort of hook it there. And
it's right at the end.
What night are the concerts?
Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Okay.
Is there going to be a
But those
concert on the
be-
31st?
Yeah. Yeah, we actually begin those
that's what you miss.
in mid-July.
That's what I miss, yeah.
Mid-July.
Oh, they run through August?
There was one I thought we might want to think about avoiding. The next, it's Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts on the last one, right?
Yeah, typically that's what we do.
Okay, so I just wondered if you're going to have a huge crowd for that on
We
Thursday
are.
night. Would they come back out the next night for
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, and just offhand, I don't have the dates of what the final date is. Usually we back it up and try to finish at least the week before the end of August, just because of vacations and different things. So
I kind of agree that I don't think the movie would really make that much difference. I'd kind of lean toward the first or the 8th. Do it earlier in August because I think vacations really start ramping up those last couple of weeks.
That's true.
You got Portland to Coast on 22nd, 23rd, I think. And that's so anyway. But we have time on that, but not a lot.
No, not a lot. If we can come, I mean, do we want to wait till we have more people here to make the decision on that?
I don't know that we need more people. I would kind of like to look at the movies.
Okay.
And I think sometimes, we pick and choose, and I think people are going to pick and choose. But it seems like some of those classic movies, you get a wide variety. I mean, I live there, so I see
Yeah.
who shows up, and yeah, there's the typical cartoon one that you're going to get. I would say the average, but then you get a Ferris Bueller's Day Off or something, and I'm just trying to think of some of those that I think more classics, and all of a sudden it doubles the amount of people that show up. And if one of those is on, say, the 8th and not the 1st, it would influence my decision.
Okay. All right, we'll table it till next month then.
Yeah, not the Transformers movie. I'm sorry. Personal opinion.
It's up for public vote now.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
weigh in.
Well, some people like us.
Post it on your Facebook. Get the votes out.
All right, next item is our annual report to City Commission. Is that coming up?
Yeah.
I thought we just did that.
No,
It didn't happen yet.
We keep tabling it.
We're kind of over a year. Now that we have a chair, the suggestion was made, and I think it's a good idea that Bob and I then would do it together.
I like that tag team.
Yeah, and I think we should probably write it together. So I will reach out to Bob Scott, you had an amazing list of accomplishments of the last year that I think was presented to the City Commission at their retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll hit the highlights on that and send that to you and see if you think these would be the things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can talk about our goals. And I'll get together with Bob, and we will come to our next meeting with what we would propose to present, and then try to get the group to sign off on it, and then do it as soon as possible after that, if that makes sense.
Sounds great.
That's great.
So you'll be presenting to the City Commission in April? Because
yeah,
our
because
meeting's
our
the end
next
of
meeting
March.
is almost yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that because of you. March 27th is spring break.
Is it spring break?
Yeah, which is going to, I'll be
That's-
out of town.
Yeah.
It's an excused absence, we are aware.
Well, that's something
Okay.
that at the end of the meeting we always have the next meeting date thing, and
Sorry.
it's always up for discussion as
Oh,
to
that's
whether
true. We could bump it to the previous Thursday.
if you want to
Okay.
look at an alternate date, that's an option. So just
I like the 20th.
Okay.
I would just want to mention to you, Mike, that I would like to go and support you guys sitting in the audience.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't surprise me if Joyce would come along too. So if you just keep us in mind as
Oh,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah,
get
yeah.
closer.
Well, we'll pick a date. Now, I would assume that the group would want to hear what we're going to present. Okay, so we'll do that at our
That'd be
next
nice.
meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll also try to have an idea of when we would want to go to the City Commission.
Right.
First or third Wednesday.
Right. Is that what it is? First and third Wednesday? I haven't been for a while. I don't remember.
Scott, is it first and third?
yes,
Wednesdays?
right,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, next is our PrAC goals update, which we did in our work session. And are we reviewing our list that we did in the work session, or are we going off of what we have here? Or are we just approving our new goals?
It's whatever you'd like to do. You can discuss that now and kind of approve what you've already talked about, or I can bring back a written document that's marked up for you at the next meeting.
I recommend we do that, and if
Yeah.
you maybe send it out early,
Mhm.
and then if we have discussions, we might be able to do any tweaks prior to the meeting. It'd be nice to come to the meeting and just adopt.
Have it done.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then everyone can see it. That sounds
Good.
good.
Appreciate the help, Scott.
You got
Thank
it.
you, Scott.
I'll send that out in advance so you can look at that.
Thank you. All right,
Okay.
camping in parks, proposed amendment.
You recall we discussed this, we discussed this more than once, but most recently at the last meeting, we brought actually the kind of the proposed ordinance amendment to you that gave us some flexibility to, on a case-by-case consideration basis, to allow camping in parks, which is currently not allowed under our park rules. And this was specifically tied to some events and things that we do, but also there might be things in the future that may come up and that kind of thing. So basically, we had a pretty simple amendment that just kind of gave this flexibility to. It actually gives the authority to the city manager under some of our other ordinance that says the city manager has the right to implement rules that need to be done. I can't remember exactly what the language says, and we kind of just put it under that. The PrAC, you supported that and basically asked me to come back and bring some. What we didn't have formulated were parameters as to maybe how those decisions were going to be made. So that's kind of the question. And one of the things you asked for was looking at some comparative policies in other systems, maybe state parks or other cities. And I did some research and was not able to find much information, unfortunately. A lot of cities, it's just kind of a silent matter. There's nothing specific, or it's just no camping in parks is the rule, and there's not really anything else to go with that. So, and the state parks doesn't work very well because many or most of the state parks are camping facilities. They have camping, and so they kind of treat that as one of their focal points, as you know. So I didn't have any good comparative policies. I'm still digging and looking around, kind of trying to. I may have to reach out a little bit more through my professional networking that I do, but not a lot of great info that way. One of the things that pondered, though, and wanted to run by you this evening, I think this is going to need to be brought back again for a little bit further follow-up, is the recommendation to limit it to certain parks that really work for this type of thing. And mostly what we're talking about, the majority of what we're talking about, is Clackamat Park. And the other one that it has in the past, and I could certainly see how it would potentially in the future have some of these types of events, is the end of the Oregon Trail site. Apparently there used to be like some Cub Scout, Boy Scout groups that used to do like an annual camp out. Hasn't happened for quite a while. I don't think it's happened since I've been here for almost 10 years. With the reopening and the new energy, and then trying to promote that site, I could see maybe some types of thing, a trail group hitting the end of the Oregon Trail and pitching some tents and camping for the night as a special thing, or maybe and we're increasing the partnership and the presence of our Native American partners. There might be some kind of a special tribal event that they'd want to do, and they do that at Clackamat. That's one of the events that why we're looking at this rule, is that they've done that at Clackamat Park, and they did that last summer. So I could see some of those types of things maybe occurring at the end of the Oregon Trail site. But when I think about the rest of the parks in our system, mostly what we're looking at are basically kind of neighborhood type parks, or even undeveloped parks that it wouldn't really accommodate very well. So that's kind of the I guess the main new information that I've got for you to ponder, and kind of wanted to just bounce that off of you tonight, get a little bit of feedback, and then I think probably tighten that up a little bit, maybe include that in the ordinance language if you're supportive, or if you've got other ideas about that. Outside of that, though, I think I'm probably going to, what I'd like to do is consult a little bit further with our city attorney, who the attorney's office writes when we do ordinances and ordinance amendments, and see if there are any further recommendations that they might give us. But outside of that, I think we've got it's a fairly broad kind of a policy, and I don't know that I see a great need to change that, other than maybe just limiting the facilities at which we would consider this. So I just give you that to see what your thoughts are.
Well, can I ask a question about that? I know if that's a broad, kind of loose, left up to city manager's determination, would there be any costs associated with that? And then would there be a creation of a fee schedule for that, and the cleanup and the maintenance, and would it adhere to the to the facility schedule that you already have for that kind of use, or was that going to be?
We've already, I believe that we've already got that pretty well covered in our park rentals and reservations, and then we also have a special event policy that for things that are out of the ordinary. You can rent a picnic shelter, you can rent a portion of a park, but if it's a special event that kind of goes above and beyond, where there are going to be things that we're going to have to do for setup or takedown or cleanup or damage potential, we have a special event permit that we issue where we put all these considerations together, and then we determine the fees based on all that. So I think I'm comfortable that we're covered on that. Yeah.
Okay. Sean?
What I was going to ask is, I remember the conversation last month, but I was wondering if you could help clarify for me. I was thinking that we specifically didn't name parks to omit from the list, not because it was kind of like we didn't want to put it in writing and restrict you from having that ability to say yes or no. Now, while I agree with you on both those parks, I wasn't sure if you or Prac
I thought we
felt
left
was
it
important.
really open-ended, because if somebody came up and they wanted to be at Chapin Park or West Leland Park, and had a good reason why they wanted to be there, we wanted that ability to be made by the city manager. Wasn't that?
Yeah, and that's how I thought it. Between you and the city manager, I think that we have faith in your decision-making process,
But we didn't want to limit just those particular parks.
It seemed like we're here because of some limitations, and so if we're redoing it, maybe changing those. Now, granted, I think both the city manager and the public or the parks director would hear from us if that was an issue, and maybe change policy again.
Obviously, no camping in the cemetery.
Well, that's certainly another good way to look at it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you talk first, Mike.
I kind of come down on the other side. I think that that staff and the city manager should have a lot of flexibility, but I think it should be limited to those 2 parks where it makes sense, so that instead of a group saying, we want to do a park in Oregon City, yeah, let's do that one. Let's steer them to where we think it works, so that the idea of putting it in Sean's backyard
Yeah.
isn't going to come up, because they know, yeah, there is, yes, we do offer that for recognized groups, and it's a case-by-case thing, but it's in one of these 2 parks. Which one would you like to use?
The ones that are not neighborhood parks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ones that don't have neighbors. That to me, that's the biggest issue, because you have enough.
Yeah.
You and the people everybody in Oregon City that lives adjacent to a park has enough issue with usage after hours and noise and whatever. I just don't think we want to get in a situation where when there's a neighborhood directly adjacent to a park that we might have overnight camping.
I definitely don't
in the
disagree
park.
with that sentiment at all, and I'm not even strong on the other side. It was just kind of my hunch at the time. Let me ask you this: rather than putting those parks in by name, our parks have kind of like collector streets and arterials. Our parks, don't we have neighborhood parks and pocket parks and regional parks? And can't we just use the word regional parks or something a little more broad?
We could. Yeah, those are, and the 2 sites that I was talking about are what you would classify as a regional park. That's pretty much, those are really the only 2 that we have in our system that we would probably classify that by the way that we described them. So this is good feedback for me. I'm thinking, we could do one of 2 things. We can name them specifically. Well, I guess we have 3 options. We can name them specifically. We could go with something more like that, where we give a general description of, we would only do so in these types of facilities. I don't know how that would work in an ordinance, if we'd have to then reference
Define a regional park.
they'd have to then,
Yeah.
the attorney would want to then cross-reference some kind of definition, so it could get a little, it's doable, but it could get a little tricky. And then not naming the parks, but with our discretion, knowing, like a lot of things, some things are just policies or precedents that you just kind of, this is what we do. We don't have to name it, but this is kind of how we do this or whatever. So
Well, now that you
if
say
we have
that,
the broad discretion, but we kind of know that this is our objective would be, we're not looking to do this very often, and when we do it, we would likely just steer people to those 2 sites.
Scott, now that you say that, I remember the rest of my thought process from last month. Was that I believed that we were referring to the ordinance, and we didn't want to put the naming in the ordinance, but that you would be developing a policy, and the policy would be explicit. So
Right. There was the
Yes.
difference
Okay.
between.
that was
Yes,
the foundation
I'm
to our
recalling that.
ordinance.
I'm recalling that.
So if you were to develop a policy, this is the process. It's these parks, that we wanted that to be in your writing as a policy rather than an ordinance. That's all. It was just a matter of not having to go back to the drawing board on ordinances again, I think was kind of our thought process.
Yep, you're right.
And policies can be changed much
Exactly.
more easily than
Exactly.
ordinance.
Than an ordinance.
So if
Right.
something in the future changed,
Yeah.
we had a different park, or we had a different way of using parks, or whatever, we can change a policy much more easily than we can change an ordinance.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Does that
Good.
work?
yeah, that does work well. That's a great suggestion.
That was the, okay.
So what I'm hearing is you are not recommending any changes to the presented ordinance change that we gave you last time, which was that broad.
And we voted
And
on
then,
that.
yes, you did. So I can feel good going forward with that. And then in the meantime, we can still be working on this policy piece separately and kind of formulating this. This is sort of the mechanics of how do we actually do this. So
Yeah.
Right.
excellent. I appreciate that. That's great. That's great direction there. So.
All right. Are we done with that one? Yes. Moving on. Other general business.
I had one.
Yes.
I emailed everybody
Yes,
out kind of a
that's on my
first
list.
draft on the letter and get some feedback. Hopefully I didn't have any grammatical issues, but from the principal.
I saw one letter that just needs to
Okay.
be capitalized.
Take a quick look at yours.
Yeah.
I think I have one here.
I don't have any corrections. I believe that the city of Oregon City, the city needs to be capitalized. Is that not true?
Yes, that
Yeah.
would be a
And that would be,
Okay.
that's my only grammatical correction.
And is the format and the layout kind of what you guys were thinking? My foundation on this is military medals and commendations. So I've had to write those, and that's where I was coming from. And then Scott gave me his document that I was able to plagiarize a little bit on and put that in and kind of tie the two. But my idea, or when I read yours, I wasn't sure what all of our goal was. And one of what I was thinking, and my assumption here, was that this is for an outgoing senior. It's not year to year to year. It's at the end of their 4 years. And that was an assumption. I'm not sure if that's what we wanted. Or if it's the student's last year of participating, and I thought we might adjust it. But
I don't know how old most of those students are, but I'm going to say that if they're involved earlier than that, they're going to want that letter earlier than that when they're applying for colleges, not after they're done with their senior year.
okay.
Right, and some of them, might only be able to participate their sophomore year, and then, because of classes they need to take,
Okay.
can't do it the other years, but yet
Right.
they really did a lot on the project their sophomore year. So I think it needs to be more than just seniors.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe we drop that out and then make this more of if we can get a class list every
Student.
You just put
May,
student in there.
and then the chair signs 17 letters or 23 letters every end of May meeting. I mean, it'd almost be like a standing May thing. Does that?
It'll work
Yeah.
if
Work.
they're not seniors. Yes, that would work great if they're
Your senior's already gone.
already applying. So they have to have all of their stuff in by March. Is that
And
right?
those,
Sooner.
and so,
January,
Mr. Tucker could
yeah.
provide us a list of those seniors
Yeah.
that didn't get a letter their junior year. Because if they got one their junior year, they can put it in
Yeah.
their
Right.
application packet.
Right.
But,
And we could always
That's
do a
something
special
that-
request
right.
if they needed
Sure.
it for it.
But I'd like Britt to know that we want to do this for
Yeah.
him, and I think he would then solicit the
Let us know.
Let us know the
letter
list.
when
Yeah.
it's needed.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of saying senior, it's going to say student.
Okay.
Well written, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. All right.
I have that letterhead one, and I'll maybe stuff it back onto that and format it in a little better and send it to you, and just
Okay.
kind of see where it's at from
Yeah.
there.
You've got the letterhead. Was that on that? Did I send you that in a Word document that you can cut and paste it
Yep.
onto our letterhead?
Yep.
Great.
I'll try to get you something that's probably 99%.
Okay.
Thank you,
And then
Sean,
with
for
this,
doing that.
is the idea then that when we coordinate with Mr. Tucker at the high school, we would get the names, and then obviously I can do the printing on the letterhead here at the city and everything, but that I would coordinate to get the current chair just to sign all the letters each time that we do this. Is that the idea? That's what I'm
That's
hearing.
what I
That
was
sounds-
thinking.
mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure that's what we were doing.
Good. Thank you, Sean, very much.
and other member
Is it-
reports, I spent 20 minutes talking to Mr. Tucker today about the projects that the students are currently working on and where they are in those projects. And he was expressing to me, what's some of it, especially like the stage down at the end of the trail. I don't know if, Scott, you can let us know where that is. I know it's in the planning department stages. I do know that they have some grant funding that needs to get used. So is there any way we can move that process along so that they don't lose that grant because time is running short? But Denise isn't here to answer some of those questions about.
I can address that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, we just, in fact, we just had a meeting on Monday
Okay.
at the end of the Oregon Trail site. Denise and I and the folks that are the organization that's running the end of the Oregon Trail. So that was part of our discussion that came up. So yeah, we're trying to. We kind of bump into this problem every year. It's an issue that we're trying to figure out a way to get ahead of in the future, because this is an ongoing partnership with the high school class. Is that they submit a project to us, they come to PRAC and present, you usually support them. They've been great at getting these grants like the Metro Enhancement, and then they go out and fundraise. But they have to work within the window of first of all, their school year, so they're limited to basically a 9-month period. And then they also have to work within the window of, they really can only they basically can build for an hour a day, or they can spend an hour or a little more than that a day soliciting donations, putting together the plans, et cetera, et cetera. So they're kind of restricted on their time, and we're trying to figure out a better system to help them, because then once we actually get to then you have to submit the land use stuff and the site plan review. And even if we put that on a little bit of a fast track and try to get it moving along, it still takes a certain amount of time. So it's just kind of a waiting period. And then all of a sudden, usually is in the spring or late winter, but usually it's the spring. Then it's just a rush construction, and then we end up the projects end up typically kind of bleeding over after the school year, and maybe some of the kids will hang around and volunteer after the class is over, or maybe Mr. Tucker just ends up doing a bunch of the work himself. So we're trying to figure out a way to back up the process, maybe by bringing the projects forward a year early, starting the site plan stuff, and our idea is try to figure out a way to work ahead of that process, so that then in the school year the project is basically construction ready, or as much as it can be. So anyway, that's part of it. The other part of it, specifically for this project this year, we're obviously very motivated as well. We want that to happen. We don't want them to lose their grant funds. And all I can tell you is we are trying to help as much as we can to get that moving ahead, and we'll figure out a way to make it happen. If, as it's happened before, sometimes that it's gone past the date a little bit. You can ask for extensions as long as you're showing progress on those grants, and we're working on it. You can see here's some pictures of the site. It's not that we're not working on it. So we've managed to help make that work. So I think we'll be okay. But unfortunately, there's a lag there, and we're trying to figure out a way to build the program so that we don't have that every year.
He mentioned that he'd like them even out, 3 years in advance.
Whatever, we'll figure it out.
The farther the better, because then they can get all their ducks in the row, so that in September, they can, hit the ground with construction rather than spending a lot of time during the planning.
Yep.
So, planning ahead on those, and in that same vein, when it comes to the Glen Oak Park, because it is right next door to the high school, they really would like to be involved in the planning process for that. And in fact, when the committee starts meeting about those parks, it would be nice to have a high school representative on that committee from the construction class, so that they can see firsthand what might be wanted, get projects going a little sooner, because what the school has built for us, in the past, especially that one at Western Leland Park, if they could do something similar, since they already have a similar plan already going, it would be ideal. They could spend a lot more time.
Yep. Right
there wouldn't
there.
be the travel time from the school quite so much, and
Absolutely.
and the kids would take a lot of ownership in something that was right there.
So I think that's a great idea, to engage them in the master plan process, and then they can actually, and they'll probably learn about design as well, and that's that's a big part of what they do, and then they're invested in the project, and they will probably want to take some components and help us do that. So
Let me digress a little bit there on the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Phase 2 project, which is from the
Donald's
Clackamas
to-
River Bridge, basically the 205 bridge. That process, they went to Portland State design students and had them come up with they had a list of goals that we had come up with, kind of like the early stages of a master plan, and then they came up with drawings of just random things, from overpass walkways to art in the sidewalk to
Lighted arches.
lighted arches, and the goal wasn't to take one winner and say this is what we're going to do, one person got rewarded based on a vote as to this was the best design, but to take elements from all of them and seeing that process work kind of makes me think to engage the students in this, almost in the sense of us mentoring them through some of the process. I mean, it'd almost be nice to slow down and take a little different approach. And what do we have? There's usually a requirement, like 3 public meetings and a couple others that, while they're formally invited to those meetings, because there's probably a sophomore, I don't know how many kids are in class, 30, there's probably 2 that are going to go to college and do this. And this might really set that hook for those kids. And I think it'd be a good thing for us to do.
I think that's an excellent idea. Like I said, I would love to engage them in the process. Part of that, I can't speak for Mr. Tucker and what he would like to do, but I think we've kind of broached that idea a little bit, but we'd have to solidify it. One of the concerns or issues with this would be timing, because as it's coming together here, and I'm just going to give you an update on the RFP situation and all that, is we're looking at probably a lot of the public input process, and those meetings that you just referred to, Sean, are going to take place in the summer. Yeah. And that's when they're not having this program. Now, would some of the kids still want to stay involved? Maybe, but I can't speak for that.
All we can do is invite.
So, yes, I'm all for it. On the other hand, I don't, we had some timing issues that bumped us back a little bit already, so I don't particularly want to recommend that we slow the process down again, because I think we're feeling the pressure from the neighbors to say, let's keep this moving now. So
I firmly agree with that. I wouldn't slow down at all.
Yeah, but in terms of the timing, it unfortunately may not work great, just because we're looking at the window as probably most of the public work being done in the summer, and then in the fall.
We did have a student, though, that got involved in that South End Concept Plan, Master Plan project. And and I just, we need to ask them.
Yeah.
The students know that a lot of these meetings are in the evening, and it would be on their own time.
And I know one student in the class, her mother's our babysitter, and I would strongly encourage her to attend regardless of whether it's June, July, or November. But maybe mention that to Britt, what we're kind of talking about, because I think having an active participant in that age group, just letting them understand the process, will be eye-opening. I can't imagine going through that at 17.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I think that could influence a career.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Definitely.
This may fit better with your update later on, but I'll throw it out here now anyway. That's the neighborhood that I live in. So I'll be kind of, the plan, I think at least, is still for me to be on the selection committee for the proposals as a representative of PRAC and as a representative of the neighborhood. And I would be more than happy to reach out to Mr. Tucker and see, he obviously knows about the park. Feel him out about the idea of, how do we get his students involved? How much would they want to be involved? Does he have 1 or 2 who want to be really involved, and see where it goes?
It's a great idea.
So I'll reach out to him before our next meeting.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And see what kind of involvement they might want to have.
Great.
And if you want.
And can I just rewind back?
Yeah.
Sorry. I hate to trash your structure of your meeting. your first.
This is member reports. You can do whatever you want.
She still
We
has
haven't got there yet.
The letter that Sean
We
wrote.
were on other business.
Would it be appropriate for that to also be signed by Scott as a representative of the city and/or the mayor? Whoever
the
that
mayor.
might
Of
be.
course.
We could easily
Might carry
put
a little more weight if it goes to a college admissions officer or whatever, rather than
I
the
don't-
chair of an advisory committee. It comes from the mayor of the city.
I could easily put a second line, and so the top one would be chair, and the bottom, the kind of ending one, is the mayor,
I'm sure you'd be happy to do
even
that.
though it's worded from PRAC.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
The city seal of approval.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about that Portland State
Oh, yeah,
McLaughlin
the
thing,
city
I'm happy
seal.
to
Right.
talk on the phone about that maybe
Okay.
before you talk to Britt, if that's some.
Okay.
If you need more example or whatever.
Okay, anything else with other general business? All right, we'll move on to member reports. Joyce, did you want to add anything?
Just that I'm going to be going to the Willamette Falls project thing next Thursday night. And if any of you want to go with me, please sign up and we can carpool.
Yeah, good plan. All right, Mike,
Nothing from me.
Sean?
I just have a topic to bring up, really not just something to kind of plant a seed. Is right now our parks close at 10 o'clock year round, and I wonder how many of the pitch black, dark neighborhood parks really should be at sunset or other times. The neighbors around them are good neighbors, and they put up with noise and events and picnics during the day, but maybe some of that quiet time is well deserved after dark, and after dark is 10 o'clock in the summer, so it makes sense, but after dark is 5 o'clock in the winter, and having kids kibitzing around at
Skateboarding.
8 and 9 o'clock at night, usually it's something a little worse than that, in my experience, is not necessary. And I also want to be sensitive to the person who wants to walk their dog through a paved pathway in the park at 8:30, and I don't think that's the person that the neighbors are going to call the police on. So I think what this really does is gives the neighbors and the police some leverage. At 7:30, there's nuisances they can call, and the police can show up and deal with it, whereas when it's closing at 10 and there's nuisances at 8 or 9, the police are much less likely to come because they're out recreating. So it's a battle I have on both sides. And
Well, you don't want people sledding down those hills 10 o'clock at night.
now that was fun. That park was the busiest it's been.
Nice white snow is,
And this is something I've battled through the years. I came as a citizen a few years back and brought it up.
I feel like we went down this road, and Scott, you may have to correct me if my recollection is wrong, but my recollection is from the police department, a nuisance is a nuisance, and they'll deal with that anytime. And they really didn't see any reason to change the hours as they were.
Well, before Scott answers, I actually had a meeting with the chief of police, and without paraphrasing, this is how I gathered his response. It was lieutenant and the chief. And we were talking about other topics, but I brought this up as their opinion. I think their opinion was that they had no opinion. They tried to stay out of it. But I can tell you from a citizen standpoint, when I call at 9 and say there's people being noisy in the park, even the operators might say, well, what time does the park close? Well, it closes at 10. Well, I'll put a call in, and nobody shows up. But at 10:30, when I call and say there's a nuisance in the park, I get a great response in 5 minutes, and the problem goes away. So it was kind of like they were ambiguous to the rule. It's whatever the rule is, we're happy to enforce the rule, was kind of the answer I got. And so I wouldn't put words in their mouth that they saw my concern or didn't. I don't think they had an answer or an opinion that, yes, that would really give us leverage to solve this issue. They didn't give me that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know I'm not the only one that calls. There's other neighbors, and so they talk to. This isn't me, just me. We talk about it all the time. In our park specifically, it's pitch black, which generally is a good thing. I mean, we don't want too much lighting out there, but something to think about.
Yeah, I don't remember. Do you remember when you came to the PrAC meeting?
Well, it's been at least 2 years.
Yeah,
maybe
we'd
3.
have to go back and I'd have to go back and look at the minutes and the follow up on that, Mike. I recall something to that effect, but we did seek an opinion from the police department, but it may be a little different than your personal meeting with them, and also you've got some real world experiences. But
well, and it's a new chief and a new lieutenant.
Yeah,
New leadership now too.
Yeah. That might make a difference.
And I get great responses when it's like I can't say enough about the police when they show up after 10 o'clock. But also I'm kind of a rules guy, and sometimes I just suck it up at 8 o'clock. The ones that really get me is when it's at 5:30 or 6 and there's stuff going on out there that shouldn't be. But I'm not sure that's what it is. At 10 o'clock, I just call.
What do our
But at 5 o'clock, I
surrounding
don't.
neighbors do? Do most of the parks around the area close at dusk?
No, most are. This is not like a scientific answer here, but from my, I recall when we did that, when we had that discussion before, when you came to as a citizen, when you're a civilian, not on the PRAC committee, but no, we. I think part of what PRAC asked to do was for some research on what other jurisdictions do, and my recollection. Plus, there was some reason I was looking at the park rules because of the camping recently that we just talked about. I went through a number of our neighboring jurisdictions and some others around the Portland area that I'm familiar with. I went on their websites and looked at their park rules for the camping thing that we just talked about, and just because of reading all that was also noticing some other things like park hours and things. And for the most part, I would say that generally, and there are exceptions to this, a lot of the municipal systems are set hours, not based on daylight hours. They're ours are 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and a lot of our park hours are in line with or close to in line with a lot of what a lot of agencies do. So does that mean we can't think about it locally differently? Certainly we can, but we seem to be in line with what a lot of agencies do. I would have to re-evaluate that and look at it a little bit closer since we're talking about it's probably, if it's been a couple of years or so, that seems about when it was like about a couple of years ago. I'd have to relook at that specifically, but
That's something I just want to tee up. I'm not pushing it hard. It's just a topic that we've got a new group of people. One other question, Scott, on a different topic. Oregon City's changing a lot of LED lights on the street lights, and our parking lot lights part of your jurisdiction, or is that still Public Works? And
Yeah.
I noticed, for example, Wesleyan hadn't been changed, and maybe there's a design reason. They're soft and comfortable as opposed to the brighter blue lights. So maybe there's a reason not to. But I just thought I'd bring it up in general.
yeah, it's not really wouldn't be really for that reason. So excellent question. Our lights are all on. It's Public Works, but working with PGE, we actually contract our street lighting with them. I mean, we pay for that service, but a lot of our parks are on that similar type of an arrangement. So probably just kind of more of a matter of it. We're sort of down that list somewhere. The streets have been the priority, but that's an excellent question, and we'll one that I'll look into.
Frontier Parkway has a different fixture than my street. My street is what I would say 90% of the country has. So my street has been changed, but Frontier Parkway has not, and the park has not. But they're also a unique fixture. So maybe it's all fixture related.
It could be. There are some limitations with the types of fixtures, and in parks you tend to have the type that are just not going to let the light disperse quite as much or whatever. But anyway, that's a good question, and I'll check into that. So.
Anything else, Sean?
I do have one other question, and that was it was brought up about the new library addition, hopefully that we're going to be voting on, and parking, and since we have to have parking for our parks, that the parking lot that's behind the Atkinson Unitarian Church is city-owned. And there's signs there that say Pioneer Center parking only, although everybody thinks it belongs to the church, and the church uses it on Sunday morning because the Pioneer Center is not open at that time. But those signs, could we have those changed to say library and Pioneer Center parking? Because people need to realize that you can park there to go to the library.
Are you talking the lot that's above the library property?
Not
now?
that, no. The lot that's on the corner of Adams and Fifth.
Directly across the street
From the
Yeah,
front
yeah.
door
The
of
front
the
door of the
Pioneer
Pioneer
Center.
Center.
Wow, that's city property.
That city property, that quarter block. Okay, Judge Ron Tom's house is the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
house there with the beautiful tree in the yard.
Yeah.
And nobody knows it because everybody believes it belongs to the church. It doesn't. There are signs in there that are that are old and faded and covered up by shrubbery that say Pioneer Center parking only.
That's a great.
So we need to get the word out that you can park there when you're using the library. I would imagine. I mean,
We are discussing with Maureen Cole, our library director, the ideas around things such as that and some shared parking, and that's obviously a big part of their planning is they have to account for enough parking spaces and how we're going to come up with that. So that's something that's in discussion. I can just
the only time that parking lot's really full for the Pioneer Center is the afternoons when they have their dance bands.
Mm-hmm.
When the Pioneer Center gets quite busy, when the band is playing, and I think those are Thursday afternoons. So I'm there may be some logistics for that, but
Rock used to meet over there, and I used to park on that road, and I had no idea that was a public lot.
it's owned by the city. Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I can
The
just
church.
tell you that we're working with the library, and as the process goes forward, we're looking and evaluating all the potential available public parking. So
Okay. Since both the library park and the Pioneer Center are part of our committee, that's why
Yeah.
I
No,
wanted to bring that up.
Great topic.
All right, I don't have a report, so we're moving on to staff reports. Scott.
okay. This will be brief. I already told you about the Movies in the Park survey. If you're interested in that, go online and vote for your movies. Staffing recruitment update. The parks manager position that we've talked about and has been vacant for a little while. We are going to be advertising that. There were some reasons, kind of logistics and some internal reasons for why we've waited a little while to recruit that position. But we're going to be advertising that position very soon and be moving forward soon on a recruitment and get back to where we're not doing 2 or 3 jobs each or whatever. We also had a retirement of we have in our parks maintenance division, park and cemetery, we have 5 full-time maintenance staff plus the parks manager, which was formerly Larry Potter, who retired. So we basically have 6 maintenance people. One of the 5 just retired. Also had an opportunity come up. He and his spouse had an opportunity come up to kind of move forward on some plans to move out of state more quickly than they thought they were going to. So we're down. Not only our manager's not available right now, and Denise has been covering a lot of that, but we're now down for the last 3 weeks or so. We've been down one of our maintenance positions. That's already been posted, closed. We received a lot of applications, and we're going through the process of reviewing that. So anyway, just letting you know we're in the process of that. The big one though is the manager position, and certainly when that person, whenever we fill that position, I'm sure that person will come to some of these meetings, and you'll have a chance to find out who that is once we know. And so some of that too, it's been, that kind of ties in a little bit to some workload issues and some things. So, I don't know if I've been probably a little less responsive or whatever. Certainly our workloads we're all kind of real busy right now. So, but. Parks Master Plan update. I sent you the information that we had finally advertised and posted the RFP. It closes on March 6th. I can tell you that just based on the the way it works with the bids and RFPs and things like that the city issues is that we have a bids webpage that contractors and consultants and architects and engineers and those types of firms or individuals register, and then they get notification of bids and that type of thing. We have a lot of people on that list, so it automatically kind of gets blasted out. But on this bids webpage, for example, when we have an RFP like we have now, if you're an interested or prospective bidder or responder to an RFP, you have to register as a plan holder to get the documents that you need to make the bid or make the proposal. So we know who's been looking and we know who's picking up the plans basically. And based on that, there have been a lot of response so far. We've got there was quite a list of people that have already at least have made the initial inquiry about looking at it, I've also been fielding a number of phone calls from interested parties, so I guess the assumption is that we're going to get a number of proposals, which is good because that means we'll probably end up with somebody good. So it closes on the 6th of March. To just again kind of reaffirm the process, we'll be having a consultant selection committee, which will be comprised of staff, so probably myself and Denise, and then we'll have a representative each from both neighborhoods. We've got those two confirmed, and that is Tom and I'm just blanked. Tom O'Brien from the Filbert Run surrounding neighborhood, and then just as of today, and Mike, you had told me before that Larry Hanlon was interested in somebody else, but apparently Joyce had a conversation with Larry, and that neighborhood, that's your neighborhood association too, so that he's been confirmed as the representative from the neighborhood. I understand. Is that your understanding as well, or?
Larry?
Yeah, Larry Hanlon.
There were two, Larry
Yeah.
and another gentleman were both interested,
Yeah.
and it basically sounded, at least at the last meeting, they didn't really care who it was.
Okay.
Larry is the co-chair of the neighborhood
Okay.
association. So
Well, he had some communication with Joyce that he actually I communicated by email today with Larry to sort of confirm that he was interested, and so maybe there's if he can't for some reason, there's an alternate person.
Right, there is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just to again confirm, Mike, you're the PrAC representative, and that's still, you're good with that and everything. So what we will do then is here over probably in the next week or so, I'll start looking at some potential dates and ways that we're going to do this, and I'll be in contact with everybody that's going to be on the evaluation and selection committee. And so over the course of the next few weeks here, we'll be in the process of selecting. Once it's closed and we receive our proposals, we'll go through the process of selecting the consultant, and then at the appropriate time I'll announce that to you and let you know who it is, and then we'll have a contract that we'll take to the commission. They have to approve a contract of this size that this is going to be. Contract will be in place. That'll have the full scope of work. The timeline will be fully laid out once we negotiate everything out, and so we're looking at basically a process. It's going to be today's the 27th. Probably looking at a process over the course of the next month that'll get kind of shaken out, and then we'll have a contract, and then we'll be underway. So that's basically where we're at on that. Questions?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
excited to get that started.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And then certainly, obviously this is something that the committee, these are the types of things that are that PrAC gets involved with, and we'll be bringing lots of updates, and there'll be public meetings, and then eventually the proposed concept or design plans will come back to PrAC as a formal presentation for you to comment and help to move it along through the process. So looking forward to that for sure. And then the last thing I have is just mentioning my involvement with Oregon Recreation Parks Association. So that we're an organizational member of ORPA. That's our statewide professional association. It's also for you as board members. You should be getting
Lots of
info
emails.
from ORPA as well as NRPA, because you're also members of those two organizations by way of being on the committee. If you're not for some reason, let me know, because I need to make sure that our records are all up to date. But anyway, I don't know if I had mentioned this before. This is just simply just FYI type of thing, is that I'm on the ORPA board, and so we have an operating board, we have an executive director, and then we have a board made up of elected membership from within the association around the state, and it tends to be people in the profession that are heavily involved in the association. And I've been a member of the board for a few years, but then this last fall I was elected as the president-elect, which the changeover for that always takes place in the fall at the annual conference. So as of this fall, I'll be the president right now. I'm the president-elect, and I go to frequent board meetings with ORPA. So I didn't know if you knew that we were represented on the ORPA board in that way. I just thought it was worth mentioning. And, if you ever have any issues about the professional association stuff, I can take issues to our board or whatever if you just have questions about that. But it tends to be probably more from a board member perspective. It's just more kind of informational stuff that you get and that type of thing. So anyway, that's it. That's my report.
Wow. Thank you. Any
Cool.
questions?
Before you close, I had one more thing.
Okay,
Did you
before we
wanna
go on to
change
the next
meeting
one,
date?
Or is there another thing?
we have one more item.
Let's go to that.
Okay, the
Then
next
I'll-
one is our next meeting date, March 27th. I would propose that we change that to March 20th, since it's not during spring break.
I concur.
Does that work on the city calendar?
Well, I'm not sure about this room. I'd have to look. We can always meet in other places. We have the Pioneer Center is usually available, and we have other possibilities. And I think I'm getting the nod from our man behind the curtain that probably this room is not available on that date. Okay, this room is not available on that date, but we can look at alternate places to meet. It just means that we potentially won't be televised for that 1 month, and that's not a big issue unless you think it is. So
For whatever it's worth, I am not available on the 20th. On the East Coast.
For fun, I hope.
No, work.
Okay.
I wouldn't go to the East Coast for fun.
I did.
But it's probably less of a conflict. It sounds like the 20th is less of a conflict for more people.
Well, I mean, I'm here on the 20th. I'm in town on the 27th and can make it.
I'm looking at this. You're talking March 20th. I may be out of town on the 20th.
All right, then let's keep it at the 27th.
Let's keep it the
I just won't
27th.
be here.
Scott, is this one where you might want to?
Will Scott be here?
Yeah.
not sure. That's I've got school age kids also. Actually, are
Do you want to look at this maybe around the 5th or 6th and send an email out to the group?
Yeah. So 5th or 6th of April, you mean?
Of March.
Of
March to say, hey,
I was-
I'm looking
Oh, I
at
see what you're
attendees
saying.
for the meeting. Can we all commit? Kind of thing.
I
What's
got
the
you.
third look like
Or
for
should we
people?
go to April 3rd?
Yeah.
Oh, I get you.
Looking ahead a week, yeah. So
I'm here.
it's possible that I may have a conflict, but we, on the staff end of things, we can usually make it work one way or another. So I'm not.
I'll have a conflict on the 3rd, so for me, it doesn't matter if that's better for everybody.
I think maybe we should just regroup in an email in a couple weeks.
Sounds
So
good.
check back
See.
maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks out from the actual meeting and see where everybody's at, kind of poll, and
Right.
then go from there. Okay. Yeah, because also we need to check with some of our other
Yeah.
members as to where we're at, and
If we have new members.
if we have new
then
members appointed, then there's some of that going on. We'll
Mhm.
figure that out a little bit. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be dicey next month.
Yes.
Yeah.
it
And
will.
do we still have the option of taking 1 month off? Not that we may want to, but
You do. Actually, I think your bylaws is actually you're supposed to meet 9 times a year.
9 or
so.
10.
We usually meet 10 times a year. We take August and December off, but I think you can also get away with, per your bylaws, you can get away with 9 meetings, I believe.
We got a lot of stuff
I'd
on the
rather
agenda.
see us try to work one
Yeah.
out.
That's
So
the
we
only
are-
thing.
we
Is,
have to
is then
make some
everything kind
date
of
arrangements, and there's some.
everything
Yeah.
backs up, and then you end up trying to
Right.
cram a lot of stuff into
Mhm.
meetings.
Yep.
So I'll do a poll by email in the next couple weeks here, and we'll kind of see where everybody's at and go from there and try to figure it out.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Excellent.
Sean?
Just one last, maybe a suggestion. Another committee I'm on, and Lisa and you and I were talking about it earlier. Right now, they're doing monthly reports from various departments, and it seems like the community service department has various departments: Pioneer Center, pool, maintenance, cemetery, and I'm wondering if, after our new members arrive, maybe once a month for the next 2 or 3 months, we could have each of those managers come and give a report kind of on their functions, needs, wants, to day in the life of their job, and kind of explain it to the new members and refresh us on what's going on.
We've actually, since the last time you were on PRAC, and then since you've been reappointed, the last couple or 3 years, we've had we've done just that. Try to bring in Kathy Wiseman from the Pioneer Center and Rochelle Parsh from the pool, and she also does a lot of our special events and things like that, and have them do kind of an annual report. And we've done that in the fall, typically. So, but we can do it anytime. So I think it's a great idea, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll also try to engage our new park and cemetery manager in that.
Yeah, and I started, I think,
So,
in June or July last year, and we didn't do it this last fall.
Yeah,
either,
you're
so-
right. We missed, and I was discussing that with our staff, and there was some reason why we didn't. But at any rate, yes.
Good for the new
I
members.
concur, and we'd like to do
Great.
that. We'd like to kind of just do that on a regular basis anyway, once in a while. So it's good. Thanks.
The maintenance is one I'm not very familiar with. We've
Sure.
heard from Rochelle and the community center over time. So.
I think it's great. You bet. I'll definitely look at plugging those into some future agendas.
Great.
Okay. Anything else? This is it. We get to hit them.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.